I spotted my husband during his business trip at the mall with his arm wrapped around an older woman. I smiled, approached them, and said, "Well, hello there, sir. Your companion seems lovely. She appears at least 18 years older than you, wouldn't you agree? Can you imagine catching your husband cheating?" Only to realize that shocking moment was just the first ripple in a vast, terrifying ocean of secrets. My world didn't just crash that day. It became a twisted, dangerous game where everyone, even my own family, had a price. It started innocently enough. I was at the fragrance counter, just trying a new hand cream, when I looked up and saw him. Ethan, my husband of 3 years, standing in the high-end section of the Cherry Creek shopping center in Denver. His hand, so tenderly, rested on the small of an older woman's back. In his other hand, a crisp shopping bag, its gold leaf logo gleaming. She was in a dark green velvet pantsuit, her hair meticulously curled. When she smiled, the wrinkles around her eyes were so deep they could trap a fly. Ethan leaned in to speak to her, and the look on his face, that soft, adoring expression, it was the same one he had when he proposed to me just last year. "Ma'am, do you like this one?" the sales associate asked me. I didn't answer. I just walked, straight through the shimmering haze of the cosmetics department, my steps as unsteady as if I were heading to a long-awaited, dreaded appointment. When Ethan finally looked up and saw me, his face froze. The older woman glanced at him, her brow furrowing in confusion. I stopped in front of them. My gaze landed on her, then shifted to Ethan. And then I broke into the sweetest, most saccharine smile of my entire life. "Well, hello, sir," I purred, my voice dripping with false cheer. "Your friend is lovely, isn't she? She looks at least 18 years your senior, wouldn't you say?" The shopping bag in Ethan's hand dropped to the polished floor with a soft thud. The woman's meticulously made-up face, her smile, crumpled like a sheet of crushed paper. Maintaining my perfect smile, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. The mall's air conditioning was blasting, raising goosebumps on my arms, but my palms were slick with sweat. "My name is Clara. I'm 31. Ethan and I were college sweethearts, married for 3 years, living that typical urban professional life in Chicago. I run a small interior design firm. He's an investment director. Life was smooth, steady. I thought this was what marriage was supposed to be. Until 3 months ago, Ethan started making frequent business trips to Denver, always for the same project, the Series B financing for a company called Evergreen Bioarma. He'd say the management team was difficult, needed handholding. Then, shirts I never bought him started appearing in his luggage. He changed the passcode on his phone and took it into the bathroom with him when he showered. I pretended not to notice. My firm had just landed 2 major clients, and I was working past midnight almost every day. Last Wednesday, unpacking his suitcase from yet another Denver trip, I found it, a receipt from a department store, tucked into a side pocket. Total, $7,500. Item listed, women's apparel. I took a photo, put the receipt back, and said nothing. Last night, at dinner, Ethan wiped his mouth. "I have to go back to Denver tomorrow. Need to push things along with Evergreen." I served him soup. "How long this time?" I asked. 3 or 4 days, probably," he mumbled, eyes glued to his bowl, avoiding my gaze. Today, a client rescheduled. Instead of driving back to my studio, on a whim I can't explain, I drove to Union Station and bought a ticket to Denver. For 2 hours on that train, I entertained 1,000 possibilities, dismissing each one. No, Ethan isn't that kind of person. I told myself this over and over. I arrived in Denver at 4 p.m., looked up the city's most exclusive mall, and took a cab. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just wandered aimlessly until I smelled a familiar cologne, the one I'd given him for his birthday. And then I saw them. After leaving the mall, I sat on a bench outside for half an hour. My phone rang twice. It was Ethan. I didn't answer. The third call was from my assistant, Mia, telling me a client wanted to adjust a design plan for tomorrow's meeting. It felt surreal. My world was collapsing, but tomorrow's meeting still had to happen. I bought a ticket for the last train back to Chicago. As the train sped through the darkness, I watched the scattered lights flash by. I remembered Ethan's vows. "I would make you the happiest woman in the world." I cried then. I wanted to cry now, but my eyes were dry and sore. It was 11 p.m. when I wheeled my small suitcase into our apartment. The living room light was on. Ethan was on the sofa, an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts. "You went to Denver," he said, not a question. "It wasn't a business trip," I replied, setting my suitcase by the wall. The client wanted a last-minute on-site review. We stared at each other across the vast living room. His eyes were bloodshot. The new stubble on his chin made him look like a stranger. For a moment, I thought he'd rush over, explain everything, hold me, tell me it was all a misunderstanding. But he just stubbed out his cigarette and stood. "Clara, it's not what you think." "And what is it that I think?" I asked, taking off my jacket. My voice was so calm, it surprised even me. "That's Eleanor Vance, the chairman of Evergreen Bioarma." Ethan walked towards me, trying to take my hand. I pulled away. "We're in the middle of a major deal. Her husband just passed away, and she's been emotionally unstable. I was just keeping her company." "Does keeping her company require your arm around her waist?" I cut him off. "Does it require you to buy her $7,500 worth of clothes?" Ethan's expression stiffened. He hadn't expected me to know about the receipt. "That was a corporate PR expense," he said, his voice trailing off. I laughed. "Ethan, we've known each other for 9 years. Do you really think I'm that stupid?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I walked past him into the bedroom and started packing. Clothes, makeup, design blueprints, my laptop. I threw them one by one into a suitcase. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching. "Where are you going?" he finally spoke. "I rented a small apartment near my studio. I was going to use it as a showroom." I zipped up the suitcase. "Guess it has a new purpose now." "Clara, let's talk." "Talk about what?" I stood and faced him. "Talk about how you were strolling through a mall with your arm around a woman at least 20 years your senior? Talk about the excuse you've used for 3 months to see her in Denver? Or should we talk about what our marriage is even worth in your eyes?" His face went pale. I dragged my suitcase towards the door. As I passed him, he grabbed my wrist. "Let go," I said. He released me. As I reached the front door, I heard him say from behind me, "This Evergreen deal is crucial for me. If it goes through, I can make partner." I turned, taking one last, hard look at the man I had loved for 9 years. His eyes were still so handsome, with a slight downward tilt that always made him look sincere. I had drowned in those eyes countless times. "So," I asked, "you're trading our marriage for a partnership?" "It's not a trade." He raised his voice. "I just need some time to handle things. Once this deal is closed, I'll break it off with her completely. I promise." I stared at him for a long time, until the ding-dong of the elevator echoed in the hallway. "Ethan," I said softly, "you make me sick." As the elevator doors closed, I saw him still standing in the doorway, his figure distorting and disappearing in the peephole. In the underground garage, I tossed my suitcase into the trunk and sat in the driver's seat, resting my forehead on the steering wheel. The dashboard lights glowed faintly, like cold, indifferent eyes. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my bank. A transfer. $100,000. The memo, "I'm sorry." Ethan knew my pride. He knew I'd never accept that money. He sent it only to alleviate his own guilt, to be able to tell himself, I tried to make it right. I stared at the number. A sudden urge to laugh bubbled up inside me. 9 years of history, 3 years of marriage, and he'd put a price tag of $100,000 on it. I didn't return the money. I didn't reply. I just started the car and drove out. The Chicago night was a blaze of lights. Behind every illuminated window, a different story was likely unfolding. My story had just turned its ugliest page. I didn't know what the next page would hold, but one thing was for sure. The Clara who had smiled and said, "Your friend is lovely," had died in that mall this afternoon. The woman who was alive now had to figure out how to live. The apartment was colder and emptier than I'd imagined. A 400-square-foot studio with nothing but a bed and a desk. I left my suitcase in a corner, opened my laptop. 13 unread emails, all work-related. I made instant coffee and started replying, as if nothing had happened. At 2 a.m., I closed the computer and lay down on the strange bed. The ceiling was starkly white. I closed my eyes, but all I could see was Ethan with his arm around that old woman, his guilty eyes. The wedding ring I had taken off lay on my dresser. My phone rang again. A text from an unknown number, "Miss Collins. This is Eleanor Vance. I think we need to meet." I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. I just switched my phone to silent, rolled over to face the wall, and tried to sleep. The city outside was sleepless, and my marriage, which had officially died the moment I arrived in Denver, was now just a corpse. But death isn't the end. It's just another kind of beginning. It would be a long time before I truly understood that. That night, I had a dream. I dreamed of Ethan in college, waiting for me by the athletic field, holding 2 melting ice cream cones. The sun was scorching, his white shirt soaked with sweat. As I ran towards him, he suddenly transformed into the suit-clad man he was now, the ice cream cones replaced by a shareholder agreement. I woke with a start. The 4 a.m. sky was a deep, dark blue. In the distance, an early morning bus rumbled. A new day was beginning, though I wished it would never come. But I had to live, and I had to live better than anyone else. That thought, like a single seed, was planted in the hardest soil of my heart in that miserable dawn. I didn't know when it would sprout, but I knew it would, because aside from making myself stronger, I had nothing left. And this was just the beginning. Eleanor Vance's text sat in my phone like a thorn for 3 days. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. Every morning, I'd glance at it, brush my teeth, wash my face, and go to the studio. Life seemed to have returned to normal if you ignored the pale, untanned line on my left ring finger. On the 4th day, a Thursday, I was reviewing construction drawings with my assistant, Mia, when the receptionist said a client had arrived without an appointment but insisted on seeing me. I walked out to the reception area and saw a woman in a navy blue suit, holding a paper cup. Her posture was formal, as if at a diplomatic summit. Mid-50s, hair in a severe bun, gold-rimmed glasses. It wasn't Eleanor Vance. "Miss Collins, I'm Eleanor Vance's personal assistant." "My name is Zhao," she said, standing and offering a business card. Silver lettering. Evergreen Bioarma Incorporated. Her title, Special Assistant to the Chairman. I didn't take the card. "I have no business with your company." "Mrs. Vance would like to have a word with you," Assistant Zhao said, her tone flat and mechanical as a robot's. "Regarding Mr. Ethan Hayes." Outside the glass door, 2 of my employees were pretending to organize materials, their ears practically pricked up. "My office," I said, turning. My office was a small, 120-square-foot space cluttered with blueprints. Assistant Zhao surveyed the room, her gaze lingering for a second on the half-dead pothose plant on my windowsill. She didn't sit in the chair I offered. "Mrs. Vance has asked me to convey that her relationship with Mr. Hayes is purely professional," she began directly. "Due to the ongoing financing deal, their interactions have been frequent, which may have caused a misunderstanding on your part." I took a pack of cigarettes from my drawer. I'd quit for 2 years, but picked it up again this week. I lit one and looked at her through the smoke. "Does a professional relationship require holding each other by the waist while shopping?" Mrs. Vance's husband passed away 3 months ago. "She has been emotionally unstable," Assistant Zhao recited, her lines identical to Ethan's. "Mr. Hayes is a project lead. Showing concern for a client is part of his job. Evergreen Bioarma must have some great employee benefits," I said, tapping ash into a tray. "Is accompanying shoppers now considered a work-related injury?" A crack finally appeared in Assistant Zhao's plastic expression. She took a thick envelope from her briefcase and placed it on my desk. "Mrs. Vance expresses her apologies. This is for your emotional distress." I looked at the envelope and laughed. $100,000 plus an envelope. My marriage is being priced with a tiered system, I see. "Take it back," I said. "Miss Collins," I repeated. "Take it back." I crushed the cigarette out. "Tell Eleanor Vance I don't sell my husband. If she wants to buy him, she can negotiate directly with Ethan. Don't come here trying to bribe me." Assistant Zhao retrieved the envelope and gave me a long, deep look. "Mrs. Vance also said that if you are willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement, promising not to reveal your marital situation with Mr. Hayes or what you recently witnessed, she can introduce your firm to 3 high-end clients." "Get out!" She left. The smell of smoke lingered. I opened the window, and the early autumn wind rushed in, rustling the papers. Mia knocked. "Clara, that woman just now a sales rep?" I cut her off. "This afternoon, go to the Kensington project site. Is the material list double-checked?" Not yet. I need it in 2 hours." The door closed. I sat back down and opened my phone. The $100,000 from Ethan was still there. A silent mockery. I hadn't touched it, but I hadn't returned it either. If they thought money could solve everything, then I'd keep it and see just how generous they could be. That evening, I received the 5th client cancellation of the month. "Clara, I'm so sorry," the client said, apologetic but firm. "We've thought about it and decided to go with another firm." "May I ask why?" I kept my voice cheerful. "It's just a style mismatch." "Again, so sorry." After hanging up, I checked my records. This was the 3rd unexplained cancellation this week. The first 2 offered flimsy excuses. This one didn't even bother. My firm had been open for 4 years with a solid reputation. A sudden wave of cancellations couldn't be a coincidence. I called Frank, a material supplier I'd worked with for years. After some small talk, I asked, "Have you heard any rumors lately about my firm?" Frank was silent. "Clara, did you piss someone off?" "What do you mean?" "Well, word on the street is that your recent projects have all had problems. Shoddy workmanship, disputes with clients." Frank lowered his voice. "The rumors are pretty detailed. I know that's not how you operate, but gossip spreads like wildfire." "Who's spreading it?" "That I don't know. Just be careful. In this business, your reputation is everything." After the call, I sat in my dark apartment, looking out at the city skyline. A window across from me glowed with warm yellow light. Inside, a family was gathered around a dinner table. It was such an ordinary scene, yet it made my eyes sting. My phone rang. It was Ethan. I stared at the flashing name until it went to voicemail. He called again. I answered. "Clara, we need to talk." His voice sounded exhausted. "Talk about what?" "About how you sent your new girlfriend to humiliate me. Or about how you're trying to ruin my reputation in the industry." There was a pause. "Ruin your reputation?" "Clara, what are you talking about?" "I've had 5 clients cancel on me this week. All long-term prospects," I said. "Ethan, if you want a divorce, I'll give it to you, but don't touch my work. That's my bottom line." "I didn't do it," he yelled. "How could I ever do that to your firm?" "Clara, am I really that despicable in your eyes? When you had your arm around that old woman in the mall, did you stop to ask yourself if you were being despicable?" He fell silent. I heard the click of a lighter. He was smoking. "Eleanor Vance came to see you?" he finally asked. "She sent an assistant. Offered me money to sign an NDA," I said with a cold laugh. "Ethan, before you sell yourself, could you at least divorce me first? Do you know what the penalty for bigamy is?" "I'm not selling myself," he almost yelled. "Clara, it's complicated. I can't explain it all right now, but can you please just trust me this one time? Just once." "Trust you with what?" "Trust that holding her was a professional courtesy. That you went to Denver 8 times in 3 months for a project. That you changed your phone's passcode to prevent corporate espionage." I could hear my own voice trembling. "Ethan, I'm not an idiot." "Next Wednesday, 7 p.m. "The old spot," he said. "I'll tell you everything. If you still want a divorce after you hear me out, I'll sign the papers. I'll give you everything." The old spot was a cafe we frequented in college, our go-to for every anniversary. Last year, he talked about Iceland and the Northern Lights. "Fine," I said and hung up. I checked my bank account. The $100,000 was still there. I checked my firm's revenue. This month's income was down 60%. My inbox had 4 new emails, 2 cancellations, a rep reminder, and a legal notice from a court. A creditor was filing to place a lien on a property Ethan owned in Denver, purchased last year. I was listed as co-owner. I had never heard of this property. Before Wednesday, I did 3 things. First, I hired a private investigator. Not the trenchcoat type, just an ordinary middle-aged man named Costello who drove a beat-up Toyota. I gave him Ethan's photo, license plate, and a list of his usual haunts. Paid him a $1,000 retainer. Focus on his movements in Denver, especially his contact with Eleanor Vance. Costello grinned. "Catching a cheater. Huh? I'm an expert." "Not just a cheater," I corrected him. "A cheater with an old woman?" He blinked, not quite understanding. I didn't elaborate. Second, I went to a law firm. A college friend recommended a lawyer specializing in divorce. A sharp woman named Miss Davis. "Evidence of infidelity is hard to prove, especially in a case like this," she said after reviewing my notes. "Seeing them together in a mall isn't direct proof of a sexual relationship. If he claims it was for business, A judge will likely dismiss it. Then let's focus on assets, I said. He has a property in Denver I knew nothing about. I suspect he's been hiding other assets. Miss Davis nodded. That we can work with. Filing for a freeze on assets takes time, but if we find hidden property, you can argue for a larger share. Prepare yourself emotionally, Miss Collins. These cases can be long and draining. I'm not afraid, I said. Third, I went back to the home I shared with Ethan. I used my spare key. The apartment was tidy, almost too tidy, as if no one lived there. The fridge was empty except for bottled water and beer. The bedding in the bedroom was unfamiliar. In the study, our photo albums were shoved to the bottom of a drawer, buried under project files. I sat there for half an hour. I didn't take anything. As I left, I saw our wedding photo on the entryway console. We were both smiling like fools. I turned it face down. Wednesday afternoon, I arrived at the cafe at 6:05 p.m. I chose a corner table by the window, ordered a black Americano. It started to rain, fine droplets streaking the glass like golden threads under the streetlights. 7:10 p.m. Ethan hadn't arrived. I called him, straight to voicemail. 7:30 p.m. The waiter asked if I wanted a refill. I shook my head, kept staring out the window. The rain was coming down harder. Pedestrians scurried. Car tires hissed. 8 p.m. A text from an unknown number, Miss Collins. Mr. Hayes has been unexpectedly detained. He will not be able to make it tonight. E.V. Eleanor Vance. I stared at the message for a full minute, then dialed Ethan's number. Still voicemail. His office line. No answer. His secretary stammered that Mr. Hayes had taken the afternoon off. I drank the cold coffee in one gulp. It was so bitter my tongue went numb. As I paid the bill, the waiter quietly told me, a gentleman called earlier, around 7:20. He said if a Miss Collins was waiting for someone, to tell her not to wait. So Ethan knew at 7:20. But he didn't contact me. He had Eleanor do it, or Eleanor did it for him. When I walked out, the rain had lessened. I stood under the awning, watching the wet streets reflect the neon lights. I remembered junior year of college, standing right here, when Ethan had tilted his umbrella completely over me, letting his own shoulder get soaked. He'd said then that he would always be there for me on every rainy day. It was raining now. Where was he? My phone buzzed. A message from Costello, the PI, Mississippi preliminary findings. Ethan Hayes has a condo in Denver's Washington Park neighborhood, registered under another name, but utility bills and access records show he's the primary resident. Also, he's made 6 large wire transfers in the last 3 months to an offshore account. Recipient information is masked. Details sent to your email. I stood in the light rain, my umbrella forgotten. Water trickled down my hair and into my collar. It was cold. Across the street, an LED screen on a department store played a jewelry ad. A model wearing a diamond ring smiled blissfully. I looked down at my own bare ring finger. There used to be a ring there. Now only a pale line remained, like a wound that wouldn't heal. It was 10 p.m. when I got home. I opened my email. Costello's file contained a copy of the condo's title deed, screenshots of bank transfers, and several grainy photos. Ethan and Eleanor entering and exiting a hotel, always late at night. The pictures were low resolution, but it was clearly them. In one, Eleanor was smiling, her arm linked with Ethan's, her other hand smoothing the collar of his coat. The gesture was as intimate as a long-married couple. Ethan's head was slightly bowed, his profile soft. It was the expression he had only when he was completely relaxed. I was so focused on the images that the doorbell rang 3 times before I reacted. Through the peephole I saw Ethan. He was drenched, hair plastered to his forehead. He held a paper bag, its bottom soaked and sagging. I opened the door, but didn't let him in. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice ragged. "Something came up. My phone died. Eleanor texted me. I cut him off. She said you were busy." He flinched. She contacted you? What else was I supposed to do?" I leaned against the doorframe. "Ethan, is there any point to these games? Having her relay your messages? Having her offer me money? Having her tell me you're just business partners? Who is the spokesperson here?" "I didn't." He raised his voice. "I was called into a last-minute project review. They made us turn off our phones. The moment it was over, I drove straight back. Traffic was hell with the rain. A project review that required you to turn off your phone. I laughed. Were you taking the bar exam or attending a national security briefing? He opened his mouth but couldn't find the words. The bag slipped from his hand and fell, its contents spilling onto the floor. A box of the antacids I always took for my stomach, and a packet of chamomile tea. He used to make it for me when I had cramps. I looked at the items on the floor and felt a wave of bitter irony. He remembered my bad stomach. He remembered my menstrual cramps. But he couldn't remember the most basic tenet of marriage, loyalty. "Come in," I said. "Let's get this over with." He was clearly surprised. He hesitated, then bent to pick up the items and followed me inside. The 400-square-foot studio was small enough to be taken in with a single glance. My half-unpacked suitcase was still by the wall. The desk was littered with instant noodle cups and empty coffee mugs. "This is where you're living?" he asked. "What, were you expecting me and Eleanor to buy a mansion together?" I sat in the only chair, leaving the edge of the bed for him. "You have 30 minutes. Explain everything." He didn't sit. He stood in the middle of the room like a schoolboy being reprimanded. Water dripped from his pants onto the floor. Eleanor's husband was Richard Vance, the founder of Evergreen Bioarma. He died of a heart attack 3 months ago. "No, Will," Ethan began, speaking quickly as if from a script. "The company is in turmoil. Eleanor is the chairman, but some of the old guard are trying to push her out. She needs Sterling's investment to solidify her position, and I'm the project lead. So you two got together." I stated. "It's an act for the benefit of others at the company," he said, his voice urgent. "Eleanor needs to project an image of having support, of having a new ally. If they see me close to her, the people trying to oust her will be more cautious." "Cautious of what?" "Cautious that she's found a lover 30 years her junior." I stood and walked towards him. "Ethan, save that story for a child. Does an act require late-night hotel visits? Does an act require buying her a $7,500 outfit? Does an act require you to buy a condo in Denver behind my back?" His face went white. How did you know about the condo?" "You think you're that good at hiding things?" I let out a sharp laugh. "Ethan, we were married for 3 years. I can tell when you're lying from a mile away now. Either you tell me the truth, or you get out, and I'll see you in court." The room was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioner. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the window pane. Ethan stared at the floor. His hands, hanging by his sides, were trembling. After a long moment, he looked up, his eyes red. "That condo? Richard Vance bought it before he died. It's registered under the name of one of Eleanor's distant relatives. After Richard passed, she wanted to transfer it to me as payment for my cooperation." "Payment for what cooperation?" I stared him down. He avoided my eyes. "For helping her gain full control of the company. Clara, Evergreen is about to go public. If this deal succeeds, the shares I get will be enough for us." "For us? There is no us, Ethan." I cut him off. "There hasn't been since the moment you put your arm around her in that mall." He looked as if I had slapped him. He staggered back a step. "I never slept with her," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "At least, not yet. What she needs is a partner to stand with her in public. What I need is for this deal to succeed. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement." "Mutually beneficial?" I repeated the words, each one a razor blade in my throat. "So what was your plan? Play the doting partner for her while keeping me on the hook? Wait until I couldn't take it anymore and left on my own so you could get the money and still maintain the image of a devoted ex-husband?" "No." He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Clara, listen to me. Once Evergreen goes public, I will cut all ties with her. I'll get the condo, the money, the shares. Then we can leave Chicago. We can go anywhere you want." I shook his hand off. "With the money you earned sleeping with an old woman?" "I didn't sleep with her," he roared. "Not yet, but you would have." I shouted back. "Ethan, do you think I'm some kind of pathetic idiot? That I would just sit by and watch my husband parade around with another woman, patiently waiting for him to make his fortune and come back to me?" "This is the last time," he said, his eyes bloodshot. "Just a few more months until the IPO process is complete. And then what?" I looked at him. "Then you'll be cleansed? All the embraces, the gifts, the late-night hotel visits, they'll all be erased? Ethan, once something is dirty, it's dirty forever. No amount of money can wash it clean." He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. The sound of the rain filled the silence between us, a silence that felt like a wall growing thicker by the second. "So, you'll never forgive me?" "No matter what?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I forgive you," I said. "I forgive you for selling yourself for money. I forgive you for treating me like a fool and lying to me for 3 months. I forgive you for taking her calls in our home, for accepting her gifts, for planning your future with her." I paused. "But I won't wait for you, and I won't take a single penny of your money. We're getting a divorce." He stumbled backward, hitting the wall. A framed print I had hung there fell, the glass shattering across the floor. We both stood frozen, letting the shards scatter around our feet. "What if I say no?" he asked, his voice soft. "Then I'll see you in court." I bent down, picked up the antacids and the tea from the floor, and pushed them back into his hands. "Take these with you and don't come back." He stood at the door for a long time, so long that the motion-activated light in the hallway went off and on again. Finally he said, "Clara, you'll regret this." "I already do," I replied. "I regret not slapping you across the face right there in the mall." The door closed. I slumped against it, sliding down to the floor. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. The floor was cold, a chill creeping up my spine. I hugged my knees, buried my face, and didn't cry. I just felt tired, so tired. I wanted to fall asleep right there and never wake up, but I knew I couldn't. I had a client meeting at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Blueprints to revise, materials to reselect. Life doesn't grant you a reprieve just because your marriage is in ruins. It just pushes you forward, whether you're bleeding or not. My phone screen lit up. A new message from Costello. "Miss Collins, found something else. An offshore account in Ethan's name has seen large frequent transactions over the past 3 months. Also, there are some questionable details surrounding the death of Eleanor Vance's husband, Richard. The official cause was a sudden heart attack, but the family refused an autopsy. Should I dig deeper?" I stared at the message. The rain outside had started to subside. The night was deep, the city sinking into a post-storm slumber, and I, sitting on the cold floor, was suddenly terrifyingly awake. This was much deeper than I had thought. I replied to Costello, "Keep digging. I want every single detail." After sending the message, I stood and started cleaning the broken glass. I picked up each piece, wrapped it in newspaper, and threw it in the trash. Then, I mopped the floor, wiped the table, and threw out the noodle cups. After all that, I took a hot shower, dried my hair, and got into bed. Before I closed my eyes, I thought, "Ethan, you think I'm just a wife you betrayed. But you forgot. Back when I was chasing you 9 years ago, I was the best researcher in our entire department. If marriage was an exam, I had failed spectacularly. But if this was a war, the game had just begun. The sky outside was beginning to lighten. A new day had arrived, carrying with it the dampness of the rain and the weight of secrets, and I was ready for whatever came next. The information from Costello was like scattered puzzle pieces on my computer screen. For 3 straight days, I barely slept, turning the fragments over and over. The offshore account statements showed over $2 million wired in over 3 months in 12 separate transactions from 6 different shell corporations. The deed for the Denver condo showed it was purchased a year ago for $1.2 million, paid in full under the name Evelyn Reed. Evelyn Reed, Eleanor Vance, Richard Vance. I stared at the names until my screen went to sleep. The sky outside was turning pale. Another day was starting, but I felt trapped in the same endless night. On the 4th day, Miss Davis, my lawyer, asked to meet. She handed me a file. I found something interesting in Evergreen BioArma's corporate structure. I took the file. Pages dense with share percentages and stakeholder names. After Richard Vance's death, his controlling shares were divided into 3 parts. 40% to Eleanor, 30% to their daughter Sophia, and the remaining 30% held in various trusts. Miss Davis tapped a line with her pen. Here's the catch. Sophia is only 15. As a minor, her shares are managed by her legal guardian, Eleanor. So effectively, Eleanor controls 70% of the company. Theoretically, yes, Miss Davis said, pausing for effect. But Richard included a codicil in his will. If Eleanor remarries, half of her inherited 40% automatically transfers to Sophia. I looked up. So Eleanor can't get married? Not legally, Miss Davis said, giving me a meaningful look. But what if she had a stable partner? Someone who could play the part of a supportive spouse in public to stabilize the company's image, but without a legal marriage that would trigger the stock transfer clause. What do you think of that? A chill went down my spine. Ethan is just a prop. I checked with my contacts at Sterling Capital, Miss Davis continued, closing the file. They are handling Evergreen Series B financing, but the partner in charge isn't Ethan. It's someone else entirely. All of Ethan's travel expense reports for Denver over the last 3 months have been rejected by accounting because the firm never officially sent him there. The soft music in the cafe became background noise. I clutched my cold coffee cup, my knuckles white. He was lying to me, I said, my voice unervingly steady. He was lying about everything from the very beginning. He might be lying to more than just you, Miss Davis said softly. Clara, I strongly advise you to file for divorce immediately and petition to freeze all his assets. The only assets we can currently trace to his name are your shared apartment and a car. Everything else has been moved. If you don't act now, once he and Eleanor finalize their plans, you could be in a much more vulnerable position. I don't want his money. This isn't about the money. Miss Davis looked me straight in the eye. This is about what you are legally owed. And if you don't take legal action now, once he and Eleanor finalize their plans, you could be in a much more vulnerable position. I paid the consultation fee and left. The September sun was still harsh, burning my skin. As I waited for a cab, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan, let's talk one last time. I deleted the text and blocked his number. But some problems couldn't be solved by blocking a number. The next morning, the landlord of my studio space called, saying he needed to terminate my lease early. His son was getting married and needed the space. My lease wasn't up, and he was willing to pay the penalty, but demanded I vacate within a month. I called around to other commercial spaces. Rents had mysteriously jumped by 30%. As soon as I mentioned my firm's name, they mumbled excuses about being fully occupied. Mia, my assistant, came to me with red-rimmed eyes. Her boyfriend's company was unexpectedly transferring him overseas, and she had to go with him. Clara, I'm so sorry. It's okay. I patted her shoulder. When do you leave? Next Monday, she said, crying harder. I really don't want to go. But I understood. Eleanor Vance was showing me, in her own way, that I couldn't win against her. That night, I met Costello at the same cafe. He was 10 minutes late, scanning the room like a spy before sitting down. Miss Collins, this is getting weird, he said in a low voice, pulling a manila envelope from his briefcase. There's something very wrong with Richard Vance's death. I took the envelope. Inside were photos and documents, medical records, and a copy of the death certificate. Handwriting messy, but cause of death clear. Sudden cardiac death. Time of death, 3:07 a.m. Location, his own bedroom. Person who found him, the housekeeper. Time of 911 call, 7 a.m. A 4-hour gap. Look at the time difference, I pointed out. Costello leaned in. And the housekeeper's story is shaky. She claimed she went to wake him at 6:30 a.m. and found him, then called 911. But security footage from the gated community shows her leaving the house in a hurry at 4 a.m. and not returning until 8 a.m. I flipped to the next photo, a blurry still from the security camera. A figure carrying a black bag slipped out of the villa side gate. Timestamp, 4:03 a.m. What's this? I asked. No idea. Costello shook his head. The housekeeper later changed her story, said she misremembered. The police didn't press it. After all, Richard Vance had a history of heart problems. Sudden death wasn't unexpected. Where was Eleanor at the time? At a charity gala in the next city over. She has a solid alibi. Costello paused. But one thing is interesting. A month before he died, Richard changed the beneficiary on his life insurance policy. It was originally just his daughter, Sophia. He changed it to a 50-50 split between Eleanor and Sophia. I kept flipping through the documents. The last one was Richard's final physical exam report from 3 months before his death. His cardiac function was normal. Cholesterol and blood pressure under control. Doctor's only recommendation, get more sleep, cut back on smoking and drinking. A man with a healthy heart suddenly dies of cardiac arrest. And there's this, Costello said, pulling out one last sheet. A bank statement. A week before his death, Richard Vance had transferred $1 million from his personal account to an offshore account. Recipient, unknown. Can you trace that account? Difficult, Costello said. But while I was looking into Ethan's offshore account, I noticed the recipient bank information was similar. They both routed through the same offshore intermediary bank. I laid all the documents out on the table. Richard Vance's death, the housekeeper's strange behavior, the insurance change, the mysterious wire transfer, Ethan and Eleanor's relationship. There was a thread connecting these pieces, but I couldn't see where it led. Costello, I said, can you get me the detailed file on Richard Vance's death scene? Police reports, crime scene photos, everything. He looked uneasy. That's risky. I'll pay more, I said. Name your price. He hesitated, then nodded. I'll try. We parted ways at 10 p.m. I walked back to my apartment building, clutching the envelope of documents. As I took out my keys, I heard footsteps in the stairwell, soft but distinct. I froze at my door, my heart pounding. The footsteps stopped on my floor. I slowly turned. The hallway light was out, casting long shadows from the green glow of the exit sign. A figure stood at the turn in the stairs, face obscured. Who's there? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The figure stepped forward. It was Eleanor Vance. Not in a suit today, but a dark dress with a cashmere cardigan. She carried a small, elegant clutch. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. Miss Collins, may we talk? She said, her voice the same as it was in the mall, calm, steady, and not open for refusal. We have nothing to talk about, I said, gripping my keys so tightly the tips dug into my palm. The pain kept me focused. About Ethan, about my husband, about many things. She took another step, now only a few feet away. I think you need to know the truth. The truth. I laughed. The truth is that you're sleeping with my husband and pretending it's a business partnership. Eleanor gently shook her head. If this were merely about an affair, I wouldn't be here. Miss Collins, you've been investigating me, haven't you? Hiring a private investigator, looking into Richard's death, into evergreen stock. I didn't answer. I understand your anger, she continued, but knowing too much about certain things is not good for you. Richard's death was not an accident. Ethan is involved in something far more dangerous than you can imagine. If you're smart, you'll take the money and walk away. Get far away from all of this. Are you threatening me? I'm advising you, she sighed, her posture like that of an elder counseling a naive youth. You're young. You have a bright future. Why throw it all away for a man who isn't worth it? I stared into her eyes. They were calm, as placid as a deep pond with no visible bottom. How did Richard die? I asked. For a split second, Eleanor's expression faltered, but she recovered instantly. A heart attack. At 3 a.m.? The housekeeper leaves at 4 a.m.? You don't call 911 until 7 a.m. I said, enunciating each word. What happened in those 3 hours? The hallway was so quiet, I could hear my own breathing. Eleanor watched me, and in those calm eyes, something finally flickered. Surprise, or perhaps caution. I couldn't tell. How much do you know? She asked, her voice lower. Enough to suspect it wasn't an accident, I said. And enough to suspect that Ethan is with you for reasons far more complex than just money. We stood in a standoff. The green light of the exit sign cast an eerie glow on her face. For a moment, I thought she would lunge at me, try to snatch the envelope, or issue a more direct threat. But she didn't. She just smiled softly, a sound that was deeply unsettling. Clara, you're smarter than I thought, she said. But smart people often die young. You can try me, I said, not backing down. She studied me for a long moment, then took a business card from her clutch and placed it on the railing. If you change your mind, call this number. $5 million. Sign an NDA and leave Chicago. This is your last chance. She turned and walked down the stairs, the click of her heels echoing, then fading. I picked up the card, a plain white card with only a string of numbers. I tore it into pieces and dropped it in the trash can. Inside my apartment, I double-bolted the door and spread all the documents on the floor. Photos, reports, bank statements. I sat there for hours, going through them one by one, looking for the critical link. At 2 a.m. my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered but said nothing. On the other end, I heard ragged breathing. Then Ethan's voice, hushed and rapid. Clara, listen to me. Whatever you found, stop now. Delete everything. Leave Chicago. Go now. Ethan, I don't have time to explain. His voice was shaking. Eleanor is not who you think she is. Richard's death. Just know that you are in incredible danger. In my study, on my computer, there's an encrypted file. The password is your birthday. There's something in there that can save your life. Get it and run. Stop digging. What is going on? The line went dead. I tried calling back, but his phone was off. I sat on the floor, a deep chill spreading through me. Outside, the city night was heavy. The lights like a million in different eyes. Ethan's warning, Eleanor's threat, and on the floor, documents where every word pointed to one conclusion. I had stumbled into a hornet's nest. But I couldn't stop now. I opened my laptop and logged into my cloud backup. All the files from Costello were there. I scrolled, zooming in on every detail. The black bag the housekeeper was carrying, the doctor's signature, the bank code for the $1 million transfer. And then I saw it. In the corner of a crime scene photo, marked by a police evidence tag, was the nightstand. On it sat a pill bottle. Small, labeled blurry, but the shape was distinctive, the brand of imported sleeping pills Richard often used. But next to the bottle were several scattered white pills that didn't match the color or shape of the sleeping pills. I zoomed in as far as I could. The white pills had tiny etchings on the edges, a security feature for certain prescription drugs. I opened my browser and started searching. I typed in the pill shape, the etching characteristics, white round tablet. The search results made my blood run cold. It was a powerful sedative, typically used for severe anxiety or psychiatric disorders, but when mixed with certain other medications, it could cause cardiac arrhythmia, even cardiac arrest. I grabbed my phone to call Costello, then stopped. Ethan said there was something on his computer. The password was my birthday. I stared at my phone. Ethan's warning and Eleanor's threat battled in my mind. The 3 a.m. city was silent as a graveyard, and I was sitting in the middle of a pile of secrets. I suddenly understood one thing. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. But I had to open it. I stood, changed my clothes, grabbed my car keys. Before leaving, I glanced at the torn pieces of the business card in the trash. $5 million. Leave town. Shut up. It was a tempting offer. I opened my door and stepped into the dim hallway. Just then, my phone rang again. Another unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Miss Collins. It was Eleanor's voice, colder than before. It seems you've made the wrong choice. What do you want? I want to help you, she said, but her tone was devoid of any warmth. Ethan just called you, didn't he? Did he tell you to go get something? I held the phone tightly, saying nothing. Don't go, Eleanor said. It's a trap. If you go there, you won't be coming back. Why should I believe you? The line was silent for a few seconds. Then she said something that made my blood freeze. Because your parents are flying back from Europe in 3 days. Flight C-1737, landing at 2 p.m. Correct. I froze, my phone almost slipping from my hand. Be a smart girl, Clara. Eleanor's voice slithered into my ear like a snake. Take the money and run, or you can see who's faster, your investigation or my actions. The call ended. I stood in the dark hallway, shaking. Not from fear, but from rage. She was using my parents to threaten me. She had crossed my final line. My phone screen went dark. I leaned against the wall and slowly slid to the floor. The early morning wind blew through the hallway window, cold as a knife. Ethan's warning, Eleanor's threat, Richard's suspicious death, the mysterious transfers, my parents preparing to return home from abroad. All the pieces finally clicked into place, forming a complete picture. And in that picture, everyone was smiling at me. I took a deep breath, stood up, and got in the elevator. The underground garage was empty. My car was in the farthest corner. As I approached, I saw a piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. Not a ticket, a photograph. It was a picture of my parents, their backs to the camera, shopping in a duty-free store at an airport. The timestamp in the corner was from yesterday. On the back, a single line, last chance. I tore the photo to shreds, got in the car, and started the engine. As I sped out of the garage, the sky was already turning a pale gray. Chicago was waking up, but I knew that for some people, the night was just beginning, and I was going to be the one to turn on the lights. The car merged into early rush hour traffic. I set the GPS for the address of my old home, the place where Ethan and I had lived for 3 years, the place filled with lies and betrayal. Now, it was the only place that might hold the truth. While waiting at a red light, I sent a text to Costello. I need the movements of everyone in the Vance household on the night of Richard's death. Housekeeper, driver, gardener, everyone. Name your price. He replied instantly, Miss Collins, this is beyond a standard investigation. Double. I typed, half in cash up front. The light turned green. I hit the gas. In the rearview mirror, the city skyscrapers were hazy in the morning mist, like a giant labyrinth, and I had to find the exit, or at least find the person who had trapped me inside. My phone buzzed again. A text from Ethan. Just 3 words, don't come home. I glanced at it, deleted it, and kept driving. Some paths, once chosen, you have to follow to the end. And I had been walking in the dark for so long, I was finally getting used to it. Long enough to see things in the shadows, like the filth hidden beneath a polished surface, like the promises made but never kept, like the man who once said he loved me, who was now my most dangerous enemy. When I turned into our residential complex, the security guard leaned out of his booth. Miss Collins, you're here early today. Just picking something up, I said, rolling down my window and forcing a smile. He nodded and raised the gate. I parked downstairs and looked up at our familiar 7th-floor balcony. The curtains were drawn, the windows dark. The elevator ascended slowly. I watched the numbers change, my palms sweating again, not from nerves, but from excitement, the thrill of finally uncovering the truth, even if that truth might destroy me. The elevator doors opened. I walked to our front door and took out my key. I had kept it. Ethan hadn't changed the locks. That saved me some trouble. The key slid into the lock and turned. The door opened. The apartment was pitch black and smelled faintly of mildew, as if it had been empty for a long time. I flipped on the lights. The living room was exactly as I had left it, even the wedding photo, still face down on the console. I went straight to the study. Ethan's laptop was on the desk, a black laptop, a birthday gift from me last year. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up, prompting for a password. I typed in my birthday. Incorrect password. I paused, then tried again. Still incorrect. My heart began to race. Ethan said the password was my birthday. Why was it wrong? Was he lying? Or... I tried his birthday. Our wedding anniversary. Every significant date I could think of. All wrong. Just as I was about to give up, I remembered something else. I typed in another date. September 15th, the day we first met. The screen flickered and unlocked. The desktop was clean. Just a few work folders. I found the encrypted file. Double-clicked it. It prompted for a second password. This time, without hesitation, I typed in Eleanor Vance's birthday, which I had seen in Costello's file. The folder opened. Inside was a single video file named Backup. I opened it. The video was shaky at first, then stabilized. It was security footage from a lavishly decorated bedroom. In the center was a large bed, and on it, a person lay with their back to the camera. I couldn't see the face, but I recognized the build, the pattern on the pajamas. It was Richard Vance. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. The door opened, and a person in a robe walked in, holding a glass of water. It was Eleanor. She stood by the bed for a moment, then leaned down, took a small bottle from the nightstand drawer, and shook a few pills into the glass. She then helped the man on the bed sit up and held the glass to his lips. Richard drank a few sips and lay back down. Eleanor sat by the bed for about 5 minutes, then got up and left. The time jumped to 3:05 a.m. The door opened again. This time it was a different person, dressed in dark clothing, wearing a hat and a mask, completely concealing their identity. This person walked to the bed, checked on Richard, then pulled a small syringe from their pocket and quickly injected it into Richard's arm. After the injection, the person pocketed the syringe, stood by the bed for a few seconds as if confirming something, then turned and left. The time jumped again. 3:17 a.m. Richard suddenly began to convulse violently, clutching at his chest, a gurgling sound coming from his throat. It lasted for about a minute. Then he went still. 4 a.m. The housekeeper appeared in the frame. She walked to the bed, checked for a pulse, then stumbled back in horror. She took out her phone, but instead of calling anyone, she turned and ran out of the room. The video ended there. I sat in front of the computer, the blood rushing to my head, a buzzing sound in my ears. My heart was pounding, so hard I thought it would explode. This wasn't an accidental death. This was murder. And the proof was hidden on Ethan's computer. The study door was suddenly pushed open. I whipped my head around, my heart stopping. Eleanor Vance stood in the doorway, holding a small silver pistol. The barrel was pointed directly at me. Her face was a blank mask, her calm eyes now as cold as ice. "I warned you, Clara," she said, her voice a soft sigh. A smart person knows when to stop. I looked at her, then back at the frozen image on the computer screen, my mind racing. Why did Ethan have this video? Why did he want me to see it? Was this a trap? Where is Ethan? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Eleanor smiled faintly. "In a safe place, waiting to complete one last task, and then we can be together forever." One last task. Like killing me. Don't be so dramatic. She took a step forward. The gun held steady. "I'm just here to clean up the trash. You, Richard. Anyone who gets in my way is trash." I gripped the pen. The study was small. We were less than 10 feet apart. All she had to do was pull the trigger. But her hand, it was trembling. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor. But I saw it. "You won't shoot," I said. "The gunshot will bring the neighbors. The police will come. How will you explain that?" She smiled. A distraught woman abandoned by her husband breaks into her ex's home to steal things. I discover her. She attacks me, and I defend myself. It's a perfectly plausible story, isn't it? She was right. If I died here now, with only the two of us as witnesses, her story would be the only one told. "I've already uploaded the video to the cloud." I bluffed. "Kill me, and it will be at police headquarters by tomorrow morning." Eleanor's smile faltered for a second, but she recovered quickly. "You think I didn't prepare for that?" She took a small remote from her pocket. "Ethan's laptop has a remote wipe program. The moment I press this button, all his data will be erased, including your cloud, your email, every backup on every device you own." A cold sweat broke out on my back. Was she telling the truth? It was possible. Ethan had a background in computer science. "So, you have two choices," Eleanor continued. "One, you hand over the laptop, sign the NDA and take the money. 2, I kill you. And then I erase all the evidence. Choose." I looked at the gun, then at the door behind her. The study was at the end of the hall, 40 feet from the front door. What were my chances if I made a run for it? What were my chances if I tried to disarm her? The seconds ticked by. Eleanor's finger tightened on the trigger. Just when I thought she was about to shoot, she spoke again. "You know, I actually admire you, Clara. In another life, we might have been friends." "Friends don't steal each other's husbands," I said coldly. She laughed as if I told a joke. "Ethan, you think I actually care about him? He's just a pawn you discard when you're done with him. Just like Richard." My heart lurched. "You killed Richard." "I gave him the ending he deserved." Eleanor's expression turned hard. An old, sick man clinging to power he couldn't manage. I stood by him for 20 years, ran his company, cleaned up his messes, and in the end, his will was designed to stop me from ever remarrying. What did he take me for? Her voice was finally laced with emotion. Rage, resentment, 2 decades of bitterness. "So you killed him," I said, and framed the housekeeper. "What was in the black bag? The syringe, the drugs." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She hadn't expected me to know that much. "You're very clever," she said. "But clever people don't live long." She raised the gun, aiming at my forehead. My fingers tightened on the pen. I had one chance. Just then, we heard footsteps outside the door. Soft, but loud in the dead silent room. Eleanor spun around. The door opened. Ethan stood there, his face ashen. He was also holding a gun. It was pointed at Eleanor. 3 people. 2 guns. 1 room. Time seemed to freeze. Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with bloodshot exhaustion. He looked terrible, unshaven and rumpled as if he hadn't slept in days. "Put the gun down, Eleanor," he said, his voice raspy. Eleanor didn't move, but she shifted her aim. The gun now covering both of us. "You betrayed me too?" she asked, her voice like ice. "I was never on your side." Ethan took a step forward. "Not since you asked me to drug Clara's coffee." I flinched. Drug my coffee. Ethan didn't look at me, his eyes locked on Eleanor. 3 months ago, you wanted me to add something to Clara's sleeping pills to make her slowly lose her mind and then have a fatal accident. That way, I would inherit her assets, transfer the money to you, and complete the final round of financing for Evergreen. Right. Sleeping pills. I remember that period. I had been sleeping poorly. Ethan had bought me sleeping pills, but I never took them. I've always hated taking medication. You didn't take them? Ethan finally glanced at me, his expression unreadable. I swapped them for vitamins, but Eleanor found out. Eleanor sneered. So, I had to change the plan. Richard died. I needed someone to stand beside me, to help me control the company. You were a perfect fit, Ethan. Young, smart, and most importantly, I had leverage over you. That surveillance video, you let me record it on purpose. Ethan said, you knew I'd make a backup, knew I'd try to use it to blackmail you one day, so you played along, using it to test my loyalty. And you failed. Eleanor's finger tightened on the trigger. Both of you are going to die here today. You won't. Ethan suddenly laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. The police are already on their way. I called them before I came up. Reported a person with a gun. Eleanor's face finally changed. As she spoke, the wail of sirens rose from the street below. In the split second that Eleanor was distracted, I lunged, ramming the pen into her wrist. She screamed, the gun flying from her hand. Ethan rushed forward, kicking the gun away, then twisted Eleanor's arm behind her back, pinning her against the wall. His movements were swift and precise. Nothing like the gentle, intellectual man I knew. When the police burst in, that's the scene they found. Eleanor screaming and struggling. Ethan holding her down, and me standing nearby, still clutching the bloody pen. Police! Don't move! Guns were pointed at all of us. Ethan slowly released Eleanor and raised his hands. I'm the one who called. That woman is Eleanor Vance, chairman of Evergreen BioArma. She's a suspect in a murder and is illegally carrying a firearm. An officer cuffed Eleanor. She stared at Ethan, her eyes filled with venom. You will regret this. The only thing I regret, Ethan said, is ever believing a word you said. The aftermath and the next battle, the police processed the scene. I was taken aside to give a statement, as was Ethan. We sat on opposite ends of the living room, separated by a swarm of busy officers, the flash of cameras, and the 2 guns lying on the floor. After my statement, a female officer brought me a glass of water. Miss Collins, do you need to go to the hospital? I shook my head and looked at Ethan. He was talking to another officer, his profile weary under the harsh lights. Eleanor was led away. As she passed me, she stopped and said, in a voice only I could hear, You think you've won? The game is just beginning, Clara. I won't be inside for long. And when I get out... An officer pulled her away, but her eyes, cold, venomous, and smiling, were seared into my memory. It was dawn when the police finished. They took the computer, the video, all the evidence. Ethan and I, as key witnesses, were told to remain available for further questioning. When everyone had left, the apartment was silent. It was just the 2 of us. For the first time in 3 years, we were alone together with nothing to say. I stood at one end of the living room, he at the other, with a field of wreckage and our shattered marriage between us. The pills, I finally said. Did you really swap them? He nodded. I couldn't do it, Clara. I don't. I cut him off. It doesn't matter now. He was silent. Then he asked, Will you ever forgive me? I looked into his eyes. The eyes I had once loved so deeply, now bloodshot and filled with exhaustion and pleading. Ethan, I said, you saved my life, and I thank you for that. But some things can't be erased by one act of heroism. He lowered his head, his shoulders slumping. I turned to leave. As I reached the door, he called my name. Clara! I looked back. That surveillance video, he said. I actually made multiple copies. I sent one to Richard Vance's daughter, Sophia. She's studying abroad, but she turns 18 next month. Once she gets control of her shares, Eleanor will have nothing left. I was stunned. Why would you do that? Because I wanted to atone, he said with a bitter smile. Even though I know some sins can never be washed away. I didn't say anything. I just opened the door and left. As I walked downstairs, the sky was brightening. The police cars were just pulling away. Curious neighbors were whispering. I walked through the small crowd to my car. My phone buzzed. It was Miss Davis. Clara, I just heard Eleanor Vance has been arrested. How did you do it? It's a long story, I said. I'll pay your fee as agreed. It's not about the fee. Miss Davis was excited. This is a major breakthrough. We can use this to leverage a much better settlement. Miss Davis, I interrupted. I have a question. If someone does the right thing in an attempt to atone for their sins, can those sins be forgiven? There was a pause. Legally, providing key evidence and cooperating with the prosecution can lead to a reduced sentence. Morally, that's for you to decide. I hung up and sat in my car, watching the sky lighten. The city's skyline became clearer. A new day was beginning, but I knew some things were far from over. Eleanor's final look, her words, "The game is just beginning," were like a splinter in my mind. A woman who could lie and wait for 20 years, who could murder her husband and almost get away with it, who could orchestrate such a massive conspiracy. Would someone like that really be defeated so easily? My phone rang again. A completely unknown number. I answered. A young girl's voice, choked with tears, came through the phone. Is this Clara Collins? Yes. My name is Sophia Vance, Richard Vance's daughter. I received a package. There was a video in it and a letter. The letter said if I go to the police with the video, they'll kill my mother. What should I do? They have my mother. I gripped the phone, my body turning cold. Sophia, where are you? Are you safe? I'm at the airport. I just landed. The girl sobbed harder. They know I'm back. Someone is following me. Clara, my father's death. My mother. The line went dead. I tried calling back, but her phone was off. The city outside my car window was fully awake. Traffic was building. Commuters rushing. Everything was normal. But I knew it wasn't. Eleanor had a contingency plan. She had anticipated this day. She had set another trap. Ethan thought he had won. The police thought the case was closed. I thought it was finally over. I spun the car around and sped towards the airport, running 3 red lights. I could already see flashing police lights in my rearview mirror, but I didn't care. Sophia's voice, terrified and helpless, echoed in my ears. It was the same feeling I had when I first saw Ethan with Eleanor in the mall. The morning fog on the highway to O'Hare hadn't fully burned off. I connected my phone to the car's Bluetooth and started making calls while weaving through traffic. Miss Davis, I need the number for a top criminal defense attorney right now. Clara, what happened? Eleanor has a hostage. It might be Sophia's mother. Sophia is back in the country. She's being followed, and I'm on my way to get her. Miss Davis gasped. Don't go alone. Call the police. The police have Eleanor, but her people are still out there. I stared at the road ahead. Send me his office address and the home addresses of every executive at Evergreen Bioarma. Clara, this is too dangerous. Doing nothing is more dangerous. I hung up. My phone immediately lit up with a list of addresses from Miss Davis. At the same time, a text came in from Costello. Miss Collins found it. Eleanor has a twin sister, Evelyn Reed. She was committed to a psychiatric facility 20 years ago for mental illness. Disappeared 3 years ago. Hospital records show Eleanor was her only visitor. A twin sister missing for 3 years. The pieces were flying together in my mind. Sophia said, they have my mother. But Eleanor was her mother. Unless she wasn't talking about Eleanor. She was talking about the missing sister from the hospital. As my car screeched into the airport parking garage, my phone rang again. It was Ethan. Clara, where are you? His voice was tense. The police just told me Eleanor's lawyer is already at the station. She claims to have a perfect alibi. She was at the charity gala the night Richard died, with hundreds of witnesses. The person in the video wasn't her. It was her sister, I said. Silence on the other end. Clara, listen to me. Go home now. Let the police handle this. Ethan's voice was trembling. I just got a call. They said if I dare testify in court, they'll what? They'll release the video of me and Eleanor shopping. They'll claim you faked it for revenge. He laughed bitterly. They'll also leak evidence of me transferring marital assets and ruin my career. Clara, we can't win. She's thought of everything. I parked the car and unbuckled my seatbelt. Ethan, one last question. That video on your computer, besides Sophia, who else did you send it to? No one else, I swear. Then how did someone use it to threaten Sophia? I pushed the car door open. Because Eleanor knew you'd make a backup. She was prepared to use it against you all along. She's playing all of us. The airport terminal was a river of people. I stood under the departures board, scanning every young girl traveling alone. Sophia was 15, but looked older in photos. Long hair, glasses, a bit of a bookish air. My phone buzzed. A photo appeared. It was Sophia wearing a baseball cap and pulling a suitcase, standing in the smoking area outside Terminal 3. The photo was taken from above, clearly from a security camera. A text followed, "You want her safe? Come to parking garage B, level 2, section D alone. No police, or you know what happens." The sender was an untraceable number. I stood there, my blood turning to ice. Eleanor was in custody, but her network was still active, still pulling the strings. This was a warning. I might have caught her, but she still had the power to hurt people, innocent people. No, not just a warning. This was an exchange. I dialed the number. It rang 3 times and was picked up. The voice on the other end was distorted by a modulator, robotic and cold. "Miss Collins, where is Sophia?" "She's safe. As long as you do as you're told. I want to hear her voice first." A few seconds of silence. Then Sophia's tearful voice came on the line. "Clara, don't come. There are so many of them." The voice was cut off. "You heard her." The modulator crackled. "Now, parking garage B, level 2. You have 10 minutes. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my mind racing. If I went, it could be a trap. If I didn't, Sophia could be hurt. They had warned me about the police, but maybe that's exactly what they wanted me to do. I walked to the nearest airport information desk and asked for a pen and paper. I scribbled a note. "My name is Clara Collins. If I am not back in 1 hour, please give this to the police. I am in parking garage B, level 2, section D. There is a kidnapping in progress." I folded the note and handed it to the young woman behind the counter. She looked at me confused. I just said, "Please," and ran. Parking garage B was vast and cold, dimly lit. Section D was in the farthest corner, near the waste disposal area. The air smelled of damp concrete and garbage. I slowed my pace, my hand reaching into my purse and closing around a can of pepper spray. Ethan had bought it for me years ago. I never thought I'd actually use it. "Miss Collins." Punctual. A voice came from behind a concrete pillar. 2 men stepped out. One tall, one short, both in generic work clothes, wearing masks and hats. The tall one held a taser. The short one was flipping a butterfly knife. "Where is Sophia?" I demanded. "The goods first," the tall one said, holding out his hand. "The video, all the copies. What Mrs. Vance wants." "I don't have it with me." The butterfly knife snapped shut in the short one's hand. "Then we can't guarantee the little girl's safety." I stared at them. "Eleanor's been arrested. Why are you still working for her?" "Arrested doesn't mean convicted," the tall one laughed. "And the money she's paying is enough for a lifetime." "So, you were involved in Richard Vance's death, too?" The men exchanged a look. The short one spat on the ground. "That old bastard had it coming. Get in the way of money, you pay the price." It all fit. Costello had mentioned the crime scene might have been professionally cleaned. These 2 were likely Eleanor's hired muscle. "I can give you the video," I said, backing away slowly. "But I have to see Sophia first." "No deal." The tall one advanced. "Give us the drive, and we let the girl go. You don't. And neither of you are walking out of here." I backed up against the cold metal of an SUV. The garage was eerily silent. The only sound my own frantic heartbeat. The pepper spray was slick with sweat in my hand. Just as the tall man raised the taser, the sound of police sirens echoed from a distance. The 2 men's heads snapped up. "You called the cops," the short one snarled. "It wasn't me." I yelled. The sirens grew closer. The tall man cursed, turned and ran. The short one hesitated, then followed him. I didn't chase them. I ran towards the pillar they had come from. Behind it was a small door marked utility. It was locked, but the hardware was old. I picked up a loose brick from the ground and smashed it against the lock. 3 hits and it broke. Inside, the room was filled with cleaning supplies and discarded luggage carts. In the corner, Sophia was tied to a chair, her mouth sealed with duct tape. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. When she saw me, she began to struggle violently. I rushed over, ripped off the tape, and untied the ropes. It's okay. The police are here. My mom. Sophia gasped, grabbing my arm. They took my mom. They said if anyone found out about my dad, they'd kill her. Where is your mom? I don't know, but I know who she is. Sophia trembled as she pulled a photo from her pocket. It was a faded family portrait, a young couple holding two identical baby girls. Eleanor is my aunt. My mom is Evelyn Reed. 3 years ago, my aunt took my mom from the hospital, and we haven't heard from her since. A month before my dad died, he secretly told me that if anything happened to him, I should find this. She pulled out a small brass key. A number was engraved on it. 317. What is this? I asked. My dad said it's for a safety deposit box at the bank. Sophia's voice shook. He said there was something inside that could protect my mom. The sirens were in the garage now. Let's go, I said, pulling Sophia to her feet. We need to get out of here. As we ran out of the utility room, police officers were swarming the area. The lead officer was the same woman from my apartment. She looked relieved to see us. Miss Collins, are you all right? We got a tip from an airport employee. The kidnappers went that way. I pointed. 2 men armed. The officer immediately dispatched her team, then turned to Sophia. You must be Sophia Vance. We need you to come with us to give a statement. Sophia clutched my hand. I have to find my mother first. The officer looked at me, then at Sophia and finally nodded. I'll send 2 officers to accompany you to the bank. But Miss Collins, first you need to tell me everything you know about that key. On the way to the bank, I got a call from Ethan. His voice was strained. Eleanor wants to see you. Me. She says she has important information to share about Sophia's mother. Ethan paused. Her lawyer says she's willing to trade that information for a plea bargain if we drop the charges. Not a chance, I said coldly. I know, Ethan said. But Clara, maybe you should go see her. Hear what she has to say. I looked out the window, then at Sophia trembling beside me. This 15-year-old girl had lost her father. Her mother was missing, and her aunt was a murderer. The key in her hand was possibly her only hope. Send me the address, I said, and I'm bringing Sophia with me. Ethan was silent for a long moment. Are you sure? She has a right to know the truth, I said. All of it. The safety deposit box required both the key and a password. Sophia didn't know the password, but we tried Richard's birthday, their wedding anniversary, the date Evergreen was founded. On the 3rd try, the box opened. Inside, no money, only a folder of documents and a USB drive. The documents were stock transfer agreements, codicils to the will, and several medical records. The name on the records was Evelyn Reed. The diagnosis, post-traumatic stress disorder. The cause was listed in a single chilling line. Witness twin sister Eleanor Vance murder their parents. Evelyn was 7 years old. The USB drive contained an audio file. Richard Vance's voice, old and tired, filled the small room. Sophia, if you are listening to this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry I kept this from you for so long. Your mother is not Eleanor. She is her twin sister, Evelyn. 20 years ago, to inherit the family fortune, Eleanor set fire to our grandparents' home. Evelyn saw everything. The trauma broke her spirit. I put her in the best care I could find, thinking I could protect her. His voice broke with a sob, but I was wrong. 3 years ago, Eleanor took her. She's been using Evelyn to blackmail me ever since, forcing me to change my will, to sign over shares. I did it because Evelyn's life was at stake, but I left one safeguard. I added a clause to my will. If Evelyn dies or is missing for more than 6 months, all shares inherited by Eleanor become void and transferred directly to you. The DNA report in here will prove your relationship with Evelyn. Sophia, I failed you and I failed Evelyn. But you must remember, Eleanor will do anything for money. If something happens to me, don't believe a word she says. Don't try to get revenge. Take this evidence to a lawyer. Protect yourself and protect your mother if she's still alive. The recording ended. Sophia had collapsed onto the sofa in the bank's private viewing room, tears streaming down her face. I held the documents, my hands shaking. A 20-year-old arson, a coerced will, a missing sister. Eleanor hadn't just become a monster. She had been one all along. The female police officer read through all the documents, her face grim. We need to reopen the investigation into that fire from 20 years ago and the disappearance of Evelyn Reed. But where is my mother now? Sophia grabbed the officer's arm. Is she still alive? No one could answer her. On the way to see Eleanor, Sophia was silent, staring out the window, her fingers wrapped so tightly around the brass key that her knuckles were white. Clara, she said suddenly, if my mom is gone, what do I do? I looked at this girl, forced to grow up overnight, and my heart ached. I thought of my own parents, of Eleanor's threat, of the fear and rage I had felt for 3 months. You'll live, I said, and you'll live better than she ever could. The meeting room at the detention center was smaller than I expected. Eleanor sat behind a glass partition, dressed in a prison jumpsuit, her hair still neat. When she saw us, she smiled, a chilling, reptilian smile. Sophia, you came too. Her voice, tiny through the speaker, was still calm and gentle. You look so much like your mother. Sophia stiffened beside me. Where is she? I asked bluntly. Eleanor leaned back. Somewhere safe, as long as you drop the charges. Forget about Richard. I'll tell you where. Impossible, I said. You can't bargain your way out of a murder charge. Then you'll never find her. Eleanor's smile widened. And I assure you, even if I'm prosecuted, I won't be in here for long. I have the best lawyers, a history of psychiatric evaluations, and, she looked at Sophia, your mother's signed declaration voluntarily transferring her guardianship to me. You forced her, Sophia shouted. Where's the proof? Eleanor raised an eyebrow. The court only cares about evidence, my dear. I looked into her eyes. Those eyes I once found so inscrutable, now just filled with naked malice. She wasn't afraid of prison. She had already planned her escape routes. She wasn't even afraid of being exposed because she held the final card, Evelyn's life. What do you want? I asked. Simple, Eleanor said. Sophia relinquishes her inheritance rights, and all shares are transferred to my name. You, Clara, sign an NDA admitting all your previous accusations were a misunderstanding. And Ethan continues to be my public partner until the Evergreen IPO is complete. And then what? I sneered. Once the company is public, you'll get rid of us one by one. Don't be so dramatic. Eleanor smiled. I just want what's mine. The Vance family fortune was always supposed to be mine alone. My parents always favored Evelyn just because she was sick, because she was weak. Why? Her voice began to distort, her carefully composed face twisting with rage. So I took it back my own way. She stared at Sophia. Your mother owes me. Your father owes me. Now it's time to pay. Sophia stood up, her small frame rigid. You're insane, she said, her voice clear and strong. You're the insane ones. Eleanor shot back, standing as well. 3 days. You have 3 days to think about it. If I don't have a signed stock transfer agreement in 3 days, you can start making arrangements for Evelyn's funeral. She pressed the button to call the guard. As she turned to leave, she looked back at me one last time and mouthed 3 words. You lose. On the drive back, Sophia cried uncontrollably. I gripped the steering wheel, my mind a chaotic mess. Eleanor's threat wasn't an empty one. If she could arrange a kidnapping from jail, she could arrange a murder. Could we call the police? Could they find her in time? Maybe. But Eleanor only gave us 3 days. My phone rang. It was Costello. Miss Collins, I found the old case file on the fire. His voice was urgent. It wasn't an accident. It was arson. But the lead detective on the case resigned the following year. He's now the head of security at Evergreen Bioarma. What's his name? Leo Johnson. Costello paused. And there's more. After Eleanor's parents died, the insurance company paid out a huge sum. Eleanor was the beneficiary, but she was only 17. That money should have been held in trust. But the day she turned 18, the entire amount was transferred out of the country. Destination unknown. Can you find out where it went? It will take time. But Miss Collins, I should warn you. While I was looking into Johnson, I found out his son started college overseas last year. $200,000 suddenly appeared in his bank account. The wire came from a shell corporation, the same one that funneled money into Ethan's offshore account. It all connected. The arson 20 years ago, the bought-off cop. Evelyn's disappearance 3 years ago. Richard's murder 3 months ago. Ethan being dragged into the mess. And now me and Sophia. This wasn't a recent crime spree. It was a 20-year conspiracy. Eleanor was a spider slowly weaving a web, trapping anyone who posed a threat. Costello, I said. I need you to investigate Leo Johnson. I want every bank statement, every phone record, everything. That's illegal. Triple my last payment, I said. Cash today. I hung up and pulled the car over. Sophia looked at me, her eyes raw. Clara, what are we going to do? I looked at the small brass key in her hand, glinting dully in the sunlight. Richard hadn't just left this key to store evidence. He was trying to give his daughter a fighting chance, a way to turn the tables, even from the grave. Do you trust your father? I asked. Sophia nodded. Then we're going to do what he said. I started the car. We're going to hire the best lawyers and sue Eleanor Vance. We'll file to freeze every asset she has. And at the same time, we're going to find your mother. But we only have 3 days. Then in 3 days, we're going to dig up 20 years of her crimes. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Something in my eyes was different. It wasn't anger or fear. It was a cold, hard resolve. She wanted to play. We would play to win. The next 72 hours were a blur. Miss Davis assembled a top-tier criminal law team. Costello unearthed all of Leo Johnson's dirty laundry, including evidence of bribery, his falsified fire report, and the money trail to his son's account. Ethan turned over every communication he'd ever had with Eleanor, detailing her instructions on asset transfers and the planned accident for me. In exchange, the DA's office agreed to consider his cooperation. On the 3rd day at dawn, Costello sent a final text. Found her. Evelyn Reed is in a private psychiatric hospital on the west side of the city, registered under a fake name, but the DNA is a match. When Sophia and I arrived, the sky was still dark. The hospital was hidden in a derelict industrial park, a decrepit building with a padlocked iron gate. We called the police, but they would take time to arrive. Sophia couldn't wait. She grabbed a crowbar from the trunk of my car and started smashing the lock. I have to see my mom, she sobbed, swinging the crowbar again and again. It's been 20 years. 20 years. The chain broke. We rushed inside. The place was dark and filthy, the air thick with the smell of disinfectant and urine. From the rooms lining the hallway came moans and a mixture of crying and laughing. It was a vision of hell. In an isolation room at the very end of the hall, we found Evelyn. She was curled in a corner, so thin she was just bones. Her hair a matted white mess. Her eyes were vacant. She showed no reaction when she saw Sophia, just mumbled over and over, "Fire. So much fire." My sister started the fire. Sophia knelt in front of her, her hand trembling as she reached out. "Mom." Evelyn's head snapped up. A flicker of clarity crossed her clouded eyes. "Sophia, it's me." "Mom." "It's me." They clung to each other, weeping. I stood in the doorway, my own eyes burning. 20 years. The best 20 years of a person's life spent in this dark, hopeless place. All because her sister wanted the family inheritance. Footsteps echoed down the hall. I turned to see a man in a white coat approaching, a syringe in his hand. "You can't take her," he said. "She's violent. She needs treatment." "What kind of treatment?" I blocked the doorway. "The kind that involves a legal imprisonment." The man's face changed. "Who are you? How did you get in?" "The police are on their way," I said. "You'd better start thinking about how you're going to explain why you've held a woman here illegally for 3 years. The man tried to run, but he was tackled by the arriving police officers. We later learned he was the director of this unlicensed facility, paid by Eleanor to care for people who needed to disappear. An ambulance took Evelyn away with Sophia by her side. I stayed behind to give my statement. When I finally walked out of the hospital, the sun was fully up. Its light pierced the clouds, illuminating this filthy place in a way that felt like a cruel joke. My phone rang. It was Ethan. "The trial date is set," he said. "Next Wednesday." Eleanor's lawyer tried to file for a psychiatric defense, but it was rejected. The new evidence we provided is enough to keep her in prison for the rest of her life. I leaned against my car, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. 3 days and nights without sleep. It seemed to be over, but I just felt empty. "Clara!" Ethan's voice was soft. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I have to say it. I watched the rising sun and thought of myself 3 months ago. The woman who put on a brave face in the mall and then cried all night. I thought my world had ended then. I didn't know it was just the beginning." "Ethan," I said, "let's get a divorce." There was a long silence. "Okay," he finally said. "I'll sign. The apartment, the car, the savings, it's all yours. I'll walk away with nothing. I don't need it, I said. I just want my design firm. You can keep the rest. Clara, I'm not forgiving you. I cut him off. I just don't want anything to do with you anymore. The money, the apartment, they were part of that marriage. I don't want them. I hung up and got in the car. Sophia had left her backpack on the passenger seat. The faded family photo peeked out. The young Evelyn holding baby Sophia, smiling with such warmth. I started the car and drove towards the city. I got a call from Miss Davis. Eleanor is demanding one last meeting with you. She says she has something important to tell you about your parents. My heart skipped a beat. My parents? What about them? She didn't say, but it didn't sound like a bluff. Miss Davis paused. Clara, are you going to go? I looked at the straight road ahead, the sunlight pouring through the windshield. Yes, I said. Some things need a proper ending. The final betrayal the second time I saw Eleanor, she looked haggard. Dark circles under her eyes. Her hair had lost its sheen, but her gaze was as sharp as ever. You won, she said as soon as I sat down. But you also lost. What does that mean? You think Richard Vance was some kind of saint? Eleanor laughed. A malicious sound. He was part of it. The fire 20 years ago. He helped me clean up the scene. He helped me get Evelyn committed because he wanted to marry me. He wanted the family money. She shook her head, but he didn't realize I couldn't stand him. A weak man who married into his success. I gripped the receiver. So you were partners? We were, Eleanor said. Until he fell in love with Evelyn. The irony. He wanted to protect her, to expose me, to send me to prison. So I had to act first. She leaned closer to the glass, her voice dropping to a whisper. Clara, why do you think your parents suddenly moved abroad? Why they never came back? Because they knew things they shouldn't have known about Richard, about me, about that fire. My blood ran cold. Your parents and my parents were old friends, Eleanor continued. The night of the fire, they were supposed to come over for dinner, but they canceled at the last minute. Later, they started suspecting it wasn't an accident. They started asking questions. Richard got scared, so he paid them off, sent them overseas, and told them to keep their mouths shut. She looked me straight in the eye. Your father accepted $300,000 in hush money. I shot to my feet, the chair scraping loudly. You're lying. Check your parents' bank records. Eleanor leaned back, a smug smile on her face. See when that money arrived, and then ask yourself why they never talk about the past. Why they were so against you marrying Ethan. Because they knew what kind of man Richard was, and they knew what kind of man his protégé would be. A guard came to signal that time was up. As Eleanor stood, she gave me one last look. We all live in lies, Clara. The only difference is some of us choose to keep deceiving ourselves, and some of us choose to face the truth. She was led away. I stood there frozen. When I left the detention center, the sunlight was blinding. I sat in my car, my hands shaking. My parents' number was on my phone screen, but I couldn't bring myself to call. If what Eleanor said was true, then everything I had fought for these past 3 months, my anger, my persistence, my sense of justice, it was all a joke. My parents had taken blood money. My marriage was a setup from the start. The truth I had sought was just one part of a much larger lie. My phone rang. It was my mother. Clara, honey, we're on a flight home tomorrow. Her voice was cheerful. Your father says he's been craving your pot roast. He hasn't had it in years. Mom, I interrupted. The fire at Eleanor Vance's parents' house 20 years ago. What do you know about it? Dead silence. Clara, what are you talking about? Did you take $300,000 in hush money? My voice was shaking. Is that why you went abroad? Why you never talk about the past? Is that why you were against my marriage to Ethan? Not because he was wrong for me, but because he was introduced by Richard Vance. A long, painful silence. Then I heard my mother start to cry. I'm sorry, Clara. We're so sorry. Your father's business, it was about to go bankrupt. We needed the money, and Richard promised he would handle everything, that no one would get hurt. But Evelyn got hurt. I yelled into the phone. She was locked in a mental hospital for 20 years. Richard is dead. Do you have any idea how many people were hurt because of that money? We didn't know. Richard said it was an accident, that Evelyn had always been unstable. My mother's sobs were uncontrollable. Clara, Mommy is so sorry. I hung up. I rested my forehead on the steering wheel, and the tears finally came. Not of sadness or anger, but of a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. We were all just pawns on a chessboard. Eleanor, Richard, my parents, Ethan, me. Everyone making moves for their own self-interest. Everyone thinking they were in the right. Everyone hurting others and being hurt in return. My phone rang again. It was Sophia. "Clara, my mom is awake. She wants to see you." In the hospital room, Evelyn Reed was propped up against some pillows. She was still frail, but her eyes were clear. Sophia held her hand, her own eyes red and swollen. "Miss Collins." Evelyn's voice was faint. "Thank you for saving me and for getting justice for Sophia." I shook my head. "I just did what had to be done." "No, you did what many people were too afraid to do." She looked at me, her gaze complicated. "My sister Eleanor, she wasn't always like this. We were so close when we were little, but she changed. Our parents always favored me because I was sickly, because I was quiet. She grew more and more jealous, more hateful." She closed her eyes, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "The night of the fire, I saw her pouring gasoline in the living room. I tried to stop her, but she pushed me away. She said, 'Why do you get everything good? This time it's my turn.'" Evelyn opened her eyes, her gaze heartbreaking. "Later, Richard found me. He said he would protect me, send me somewhere safe to heal. I believed him, and I ended up locked away for 20 years. "Your parents," Evelyn said suddenly. "They came to see me about a month after the fire. They came to the hospital secretly and asked me what I saw that night. I told them the truth, but they never came back. I thought they had given up. I froze. They came to see you." Evelyn nodded. "Your mother cried for a long time. She said your father's business was in trouble, that they needed a lot of money. She said she was sorry, but there was nothing she could do. So they had tried. They had sought the truth, but in the end, they chose the money. When I left the hospital, Sophia walked me to the elevator. 'Clara,' she said. 'Thank you. Without you, I might never have found my mom.' I gave her a hug. 'Take care of your mother, and take care of yourself. Evergreen BioArma needs you. The employees need you. Will you stay and help me?' she asked, her eyes hopeful. 'I don't know anything about running a company. I need someone to teach me.' I thought for a moment, then nodded. 'Okay.' As the elevator doors closed, I saw her still waving. The little girl who just a month ago was sheltered under her father's wing now had to run a company, care for a sick mother, and face her father's murder in court. Life never waits until you're ready. On the drive home, I made a detour to my studio. Mia was gone, and the new assistant was still learning the ropes. But the business was running. The design boards on the walls, the material samples on the tables, the client files on the computer. This was mine, something I had built piece by piece. My phone buzzed. A bank notification. Ethan had withdrawn the $100,000 he had sent me, but he had transferred a new amount, $120,000. The memo read, "Studio rent." I stared at the number, and this time I didn't send it back. Some debts can't be paid with money, but some forgiveness can begin with accepting restitution. Not now, maybe not next year, but one day, when the wounds have scarred over, when the memories have faded, when I can think of him without feeling pain, maybe then I can truly let go. I opened my laptop. 13 new emails, client inquiries, supplier quotes, invitations to industry events. Life went on, work went on. I made a cup of coffee and started to reply. Outside, the sun was setting behind the skyscrapers, and the city lights began to twinkle on. One by one, another night, another new beginning. I didn't go to the trial. Miss Davis told me Eleanor tried to recant her confession, claiming Richard had planned everything and she was just a victim. But the new evidence, Leo Johnson's testimony, the original fire report, Evelyn's statement, made her defense crumble. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and found her guilty on all charges. When the judge read the sentence, Eleanor was calm until she heard the words, "Life in prison." Then her head snapped up, her eyes finding Evelyn and Sophia in the gallery. The two sisters locked eyes across the courtroom, one filled with hate, the other with sorrow. It was the last time they would ever see each other. Leaving the courthouse, Sophia asked me, "Clara, do you think she'll ever feel remorse?" I looked up at the gray sky and remembered Eleanor's smug smile. She believed she was right until the very end. Believed she was the victim. No, I said. Some people never feel remorse because they never believe they've done anything wrong. Should I hate her then? I turned to look at her. Whether you hate her is your decision, but don't let that hatred ruin your life. Don't let her win again. Sophia nodded, not quite understanding. She was still a child, forced to bear so much, but perhaps that is the price of growing up. Finding strength in pain, finding light in darkness. A month later, Ethan and I officially divorced. We met outside the county clerk's office to sign the final papers. He had lost weight and cut his hair short. He looked sharper, but the exhaustion in his eyes was still there. Clara! He handed me a folder. This is the deed to your studio's building. I bought it. Consider it a small part of my apology. I opened it. It was a property deed with my name listed as the owner. You don't have to do this. Please take it, he interrupted. Otherwise, I'll never be able to live with myself. I looked at him. This man I had loved for 9 years and hated for 3 months. He stood before me now like a stranger. The sweet memories, the bitter betrayal. It all felt like a lifetime ago. Ethan, I said, what will you do now? Leave Chicago, he said. Go somewhere no one knows me. Start over. Will it be better? He gave a small, sad smile. I don't know, but I have to try. We walked through the process in silence, signed the papers, got the stamps, received our copies. When we walked out, the sun was bright and warm. He called out from behind me, I'm sorry and thank you. I didn't turn back. I just waved my hand. As I drove away, I saw him in the rearview mirror, still standing there, getting smaller and smaller until he disappeared around a corner. In that moment, I felt no hate, no love, just a quiet sense of release, like setting down a heavy bag I had been carrying for too long. The straps had left marks on my shoulders. But finally, I could stand up straight and look ahead. Business at the studio slowly picked up. Sophia gave me the contract to redesign one of Evergreen BioArma's office buildings. It was a huge project, enough to sustain the firm for the next year. My new assistant, a recent graduate named Chloe, was bright and enthusiastic. She asked me one day, Clara, why did you choose to become an interior designer? I thought for a moment. Because I want to create beautiful spaces to make the people who live in them feel happy. Are you happy? She asked. I paused, then smiled. I'm working on it. Yes, I was working on it. Working to forget the pain of the past, to build a life in the present, to believe in a better future. I woke up every day, worked, ate, slept. I talked to my parents on the phone occasionally. They were still racked with guilt, but I was learning to understand. In their desperate situation, they made the choice they thought was right, just as I had. On weekends, I would visit Evelyn at the hospital. She was getting better, recognizing people, holding simple conversations. Sophia came every day after school to be with her. The two of them, slowly rebuilding a relationship lost for 20 years. Sometimes Evelyn would say, out of the blue, my sister used to brush my hair. She would make beautiful braids. Then she would fall silent. Hate and love sometimes separated only by a thin veil of memory. And time would make that veil more and more translucent until you couldn't tell one from the other. One day in December, the first snow of the season fell on Chicago. I stood at my studio window, watching the flakes drift down, blanketing the streets, the rooftops, the entire world. My phone rang. It was Sophia. Clara! Mom said my name today. Her voice was filled with joy. She called me Sophia, and she asked if I had finished my homework. That's wonderful, I smiled. Clara, will you always be here in Chicago? I looked out at the snow. I thought about everything I had been through in these last few months. Betrayal, deception, danger, but also persistence, courage, truth, and redemption. This city had witnessed my collapse, and it had witnessed my rebirth. Yes, I said, I'll be here. I hung up the phone and continued to watch the snow. It fell softly, as if cleansing the world, covering all the dirt and all the scars, leaving behind a pure, clean white. Perhaps this is what life is, a constant cycle of being wounded and healing, of falling and getting back up. There are no absolute victories, no final defeats, only a series of battles with brief moments of peace in between. But it is those brief moments of peace, those small pockets of beauty, a hot cup of coffee, a snowfall, a child's laughter, a sincere apology that give us the courage to keep going, to keep loving, believing, creating, even when we know there might be more lies, more betrayals, more long nights we must face alone. Because that is what it means to be alive. I closed the window and went back to my desk. A new design was open on my computer screen, a blank canvas waiting to be filled with lines, colors, and light. I picked up my stylus and drew the first line, the nib scraped softly against the tablet. Outside, the snow was still falling, gently covering this wounded and yet resilient world. And my story, like the city in the snow, had known darkness, but would eventually be covered in white. It had been broken, but it was slowly being rebuilt. This whole experience changed me forever. It forced me to look at the world, and at myself, in ways I never thought possible. Have you ever faced a betrayal that revealed a much darker truth about the people you thought you knew? Tell me your story in the comments below, or just let me know what you think of mine. I'd really love to hear from you.